Kalen had never seen a solar farm look quite so ridiculous. Not since the time they tried to power the station with trash compactors, anyway. It was a sprawling sea of mirrors and nodes, once meant to sustain the delicate balance of human existence in this sector. Now, a giant, shiny death ray, and it was her job to make sure it didn't overheat and turn them all into cosmic toast. "Just another day in paradise," she muttered, adjusting her visor to block out the perpetual glare. Her companion, Jax, snorted beside her. "Paradise? More like hell with a better tanning salon," Jax replied, smirking as he tapped on his tablet. "You know, I never thought I'd be working on a weapon of mass destruction when I signed up to save humanity." "Yeah. Well, turns out mass destruction is just another box to tick on the how to save the human race checklist," Kalen said. "Right after don't die horribly and try not to screw up." The two of them were perched precariously atop the central control unit, a complex beast of a machine humming with power and potential disaster. From here, they could see the entirety of the farm, stretching out like a giant metallic spider web, ready to channel the sun's fury into whatever unfortunate target they chose. Today's target: a rogue planet barreling through space like a drunken deity on a cosmic bender. "You know," Jax continued, gesturing broadly, "some people get to save the world by, I dunno, curing diseases or something noble. We get to do it by blowing up a planet." "Hey, everyone plays their part," Kalen said, checking a readout that seemed to be flickering ominously. "Some people save lives by breaking things. Plus, it's not like the planet's got a family who's gonna miss it." Jax chuckled, nudging her with an elbow. "You think it's got a name? Probably something dumb like Planet Bob." They both laughed, the sound bouncing off the metal surfaces and echoing into the void. It was a moment of levity in an otherwise dreary reality, a small respite from the fact that they were essentially about to flick a switch and hope for the best. "Hey, Kalen," came a voice crackling over the comms. It was Ree, their esteemed leader and the unofficial queen of sarcastic oversight. "The readings on the Northern Array are all over the place. Any chance you could stop laughing at your own jokes long enough to fix it?" Kalen sighed, rolling her eyes. Yeah, on it," she replied. "Don't worry, Ree, we'll make sure the damn thing doesn't blow us up before we get a chance to save the day." Jax gave her a mock salute, heading off towards the offending array, his steps careful on the thin grating. "I'll check the wiring. Don't want it shorting out just as we're about to become heroes." "Heroes, right. That's what we'll call it when we're standing on a pile of space rubble," Kalen said, shaking her head as she continued her checks. The rogue planet was something out of a cosmic horror story, a great ugly ball of rock and ice, hurtling into their solar system with all the grace of a wrecking ball at a tea party. No one knew where it came from, or why it had decided their little corner of the universe was the perfect place for a visit. But given its trajectory, it wouldn't be long before it turned the whole delicate structure of their solar system into a chaotic mess. "Hey, Kalen," Jax called over in a sing-song voice. "You think if we screw this up, they'll name the crater after us?" "Sure," she called back. "The Kalen Jax Memorial Crater has a nice ring to it." Ree's voice cut in again, all business this time. "Focus, team. We've got less than a day before that thing's gravitational field starts to mess with local orbits. I'd rather not explain to Command why their precious superlaser is now a rather expensive paperweight." "Got it, boss," Kalen replied, glancing up at the sky. Somewhere out there, hurtling towards them, was a planet-sized headache. And here she was, one of the last lines of defense, armed with a toolkit, a sarcastic partner, and a superlaser just itching to do something impressive. She sighed, diving back into her work, checking connections and rerouting power where needed. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. And if they failed, well, that crater was going to need a name. The day dragged on, each tick of the clock bringing the rogue planet closer. Kalen and Jax worked tirelessly, their banter a constant backdrop to the whir of machines and the hum of energy pulsing through the solar farm. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the metallic landscape, They finally paused, surveying their handiwork with a mix of pride and exhaustion. "You think we did it?" Jax asked, shielding his eyes against the glare of the last rays. "Hell if I know," Kalen replied, shrugging. "But if it doesn't work, at least we can say we went out with a bang." "Ah yes, the epitaph of champions," Jax said, clapping her on the back. "Come on, let's go see if Ree's got anything that passes for coffee around here." They made their way back to the central hub, where Ree was already waiting, tapping her foot impatiently. "Took you long enough," she said, though there was a faint smile twitching at the corners of her mouth. "Everything set," Kalen nodded. "As ready as it'll ever be." "Good," Ree said, crossing her arms, "because Command just sent word. The planet's trajectory is confirmed. We've got 12 Iors until it's close enough for us to punch a hole in it. 12 Iors. It was both an eternity and no time at all." Kalen felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders, the reality of their situation crashing down. It was one thing to joke about blowing up a planet, another entirely to actually do it. Jax, ever the optimist, clapped his hands together. "Well, let's get ready to blow the bastard out of the sky then, shall we?" Ree nodded, her expression serious. But first rest. We need to be sharp for this." As they settled in for a few stolen hours of sleep, Kalen couldn't help but think about the rogue planet hurtling towards them through the dark vacuum of space. A giant, unfeeling mass of rock and ice, oblivious to the chaos it was about to cause. She didn't believe in fate or destiny or any of those convenient excuses people used when things went wrong, but she did believe in humanity's ability to survive against the odds. "We've got this, right?" Jax murmured from the bunk above her, his voice thick with sleep. "Yeah," she replied softly, closing her eyes. "We've got this." And as she drifted off, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were teetering on the edge of something monumental, that this was just the beginning of a story they'd be telling for generations to come, assuming they survived to tell it. The Iors slipped by, the silence of space broken only by the occasional beep of machinery. When Ree woke them, the gravity of the moment was palpable. Everyone moved with a sense of purpose, the usual snark and banter set aside in favor of focus. "All right, team," Ree said, her voice steady. "This is it. We've got one shot at this, so let's make it count." Kalen took a deep breath, her fingers dancing over controls that she'd spent years mastering. Jax was beside her, his usual grin replaced with a look of intense concentration. And beyond them, past the gleaming solar arrays and the void of space, the rogue planet loomed, an uninvited guest at their little corner of the universe. "Ready," Kalen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Fire it up," Ree commanded. And so they did. The solar farm roared to life, a symphony of metal and energy, each piece slotting into place with a precision that was almost beautiful. Power surged through the arrays, focused and honed by their meticulous preparations. And then, all at once, it was released, a beam of pure, concentrated sunlight, cutting through the darkness with a brilliance that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. They watched as the beam struck the rogue planet, erupting in a burst of light and heat. For a moment time seemed to stand still, and then the planet began to crumble, pieces breaking off and spiraling into space. "We did it," Jax breathed, his voice filled with wonder. Kalen couldn't help but grin, relief washing over her in waves. "We really did it." Ree let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, a rare, genuine smile breaking across her face. "Nice work, team." As the remnants of the rogue planet scattered across the cosmos, the three of them stood together, a small, stubborn band of engineers, united in their victory. "Well," Jax said, finally breaking the silence. "Guess we'll have to find a new name for that crater, huh?" Kalen laughed, shaking her head. "Yeah. The nice try. Universe Crater has a nice ring to it." And as they stood there, basking in their success, Kalen felt something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. Because if humanity could stare down a rogue planet and win, then maybe, just maybe, they could handle whatever else the universe decided to throw their way. As they stood, grinning like idiots who'd just won the intergalactic lottery without buying a ticket, There was a crackle from the comms that could only mean more work or trouble. It was Ree, naturally, always the bearer of the kind of news that had you reaching for a stiff drink. "Hey heroes, quit gawking at the light show and get back here," she said, her voice dripping with its usual sardonic flair. "We've got company." "Company?" Kalen raised an eyebrow, sharing a look with Jax that said more than words ever could. The kind of look that says, "What now?" "Yeah," Ree continued. "Turns out our new friends left us a little message." Jax chuckled, shaking his head. "We blow up their rock and now they want to chat." Typical. Back in the central hub, Ree was hunched over a console, eyes narrowed at a screen filled with indecipherable scribbles, or, as she liked to call it, alien chicken scratch. "Good news is, they didn't send us a bill for that demolition job," she said, motioning them over. "Bad news. I need you to decipher it, Kalen." Kalen squinted at the screen, the symbols dancing like drunken ants across the display. "Deciphering alien languages by lunchtime. Just what I always wanted. Can't be worse than your usual handwriting," Jax quipped, earning himself a playful swat. After an ire that felt like a week, Kalen cracked the code, squinting at the translation with the kind of disbelief usually reserved for seeing a politician tell the truth. "You're not gonna believe this." "Try me," Ree said, crossing her arms. Kalen took a deep breath, her mind tripping over the absurdity of it all. According to this, they think we're legends, like mythical saviors. Apparently there's some ancient alien myth about humans being the key to their liberation, rebellion, something like that. Jax let out a low whistle. "I've been called many things, but a mythical savior, that's new." Ree snorted. "You sure this isn't some elaborate prank by command?" "Because if it is, I'm not laughing." Kalen shook her head, pointing at the screen. "I'm serious. They believe humanity is destined to free them. This whole rogue planet shtick, just a cover for their fleet. They want us to help them break free from whatever mess they've gotten themselves into." "Convenient," Ree muttered. "They send a rock our way and expect a rescue mission." Jax leaned back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "I guess it's not every day you find out you're the galaxy's last hope. What's next? They gonna ask us to lead an uprising against their oppressive overlords. Wouldn't that be a twist?" Kalen mused. "But the message is clear. They've been watching us, banking on the chance we'd live up to whatever tales they've spun." "Great," Ree sighed. "Extra work, no overtime." Typical. Kalen glanced at the encrypted message, pondering the implications. "So what's the plan, boss? Do we roll with the myth, or do we tell them we're just some space janitors?" "I'm weighing the options," Ree replied, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Kind of tempted to send them a postcard saying, 'Sorry, you've got the wrong humans.'" Jax laughed, crossing his arms. "We could always lead them on. Give them hope and maybe they'll sort themselves out." Kalen nodded, though the enormity of the situation was hard to ignore. They just blasted a planet-sized rock to bits, and now they were supposed to play cosmic superheroes. "Do we even know what we're supposed to be liberating them from?" "Yeah, that part's a bit fuzzy," Ree admitted, running a hand through her hair. "But it's probably something nasty, considering they thought a giant rock was the best way to get our attention." "Think we can pull this off?" Jax asked, his tone half joking, half serious. Ree shrugged. "Not like we haven't faced impossible odds before. Besides, if we play our cards right, maybe we can convince them to handle the mess themselves. Or," Kalen interjected, "accidentally start an interstellar war." "You know, just for kicks," Jax grinned. "I always wanted to star in one of those dramatic war documentaries, and here we see the fearless engineer, neck deep in a conflict he never asked for." "Fearless, my ass," Kalen shot back, suppressing a smile. "More like recklessly optimistic." The three of them fell into a companionable silence, the weight of the situation settling over them like a particularly unpleasant blanket. It was one thing to blow up a rogue planet and call it a day, another entirely to be thrust into the role of intergalactic liberators with no manual or safety net. "So, what's our next move?" Jax broke the silence, looking between them. "We see how this plays out," Ree decided, her voice firm. "Keep listening, keep talking. Maybe we'll learn something useful." "And if we don't?" Kalen asked, arching an eyebrow. Then we do what we always do, Ree replied with a wry smile. Make it up as we go along. Sounds like a plan, Jack said, clapping his hands together. Or at least the semblance of one. As they settled back, Kalen couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. Here they were, a ragtag bunch of engineers, suddenly thrust into the role of saviors for an alien fleet hiding behind a smashed rock. She wasn't exactly sure what the universe was up to, throwing this curveball their way, but she had a feeling it was going to be one hell of a ride. Just think, Jack said, breaking the contemplative silence, if we pull this off, they'll probably name something after us. Yeah, Kalen chuckled, picturing it. Though we didn't sign up for this memorial shipyard. Ree's voice was dry, her smile a ghost on her lips. Let's just hope it's not a memorial. They watched the stars, each one a distant world with its own stories and mysteries. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet waited, banking on an ancient myth to save them. And here, in their dingy little outpost, 3 humans were about to figure out just how far the legend would take them, or if it would take them down altogether. Hey, Ree, Jack said suddenly, turning to their leader with a mischievous grin. You think we should ask them if they've got any decent coffee on those ships? Ree snorted, shaking her head. If they do, I might just consider the whole savior gig. Kalen laughed, the sound echoing softly in the confines of the hub. Despite the chaos, the uncertainty, and the sheer absurdity of their situation, there was something comforting about it all. Because at the end of the day, they were still just 3 humans, doing their best to muddle through the madness of the cosmos. So, Kalen said, leaning back with a sigh, what's the first step in saving a fleet of aliens based on a myth? We ask them what they want, Ree replied simply, her gaze fixed on the console. Then we figure out if we can actually help without getting ourselves killed in the process. Jax grinned, ever the optimist. Easy enough. Yeah, Kalen muttered, though her heart wasn't quite convinced. Easy. The hours ticked by slowly, the anticipation a palpable force. Kalen, Jax, and Ree pored over the message, dissecting every word, every implied meaning. They sent back a cautious reply, a mix of curiosity and reluctance peppered with just enough bravado to keep things interesting. It was a risky move, but then again they were already in deep. As the minutes stretched into hours, an answer arrived. The message, decoded with the help of their previous work, was a bit clearer this time. It spoke of oppression, of a need for freedom and the kind of hope that was both desperate and bold. The aliens believed they were destined to break free, and somehow humanity was at the heart of it. They sound pretty convinced we're their ticket out, Jax noted, scanning the lines with a critical eye. Convinced or just out of options, Ree replied. But either way, they're looking to us for help. Kalen leaned back, her mind racing. And what's our price of admission into this interstellar myth? Good question, Ree said, tapping her fingers thoughtfully. We might have to improvise, Jax chuckled. Classic us then. Their situation was a precarious one, a delicate balance between hope and danger. They were just engineers after all, not diplomats or saviors. But if the universe wanted to thrust them into the role, who were they to argue? As they prepared to send their response, Kalen couldn't help but reflect on the irony. A giant space rock, a desperate fleet, and a myth older than their recorded history. If nothing else, it made for one hell of a story. Ready? Ree asked, her finger hovering over the send button. As ready as we'll ever be, Kalen replied, the weight of their decision heavy in her chest. With a nod, Ree pressed the button, and their reply shot out into the vast expanse, a beacon of hope or folly aimed at the waiting fleet. As they sat back, waiting for whatever came next, Jax broke the silence with a wry grin. Hey, think they'll throw in a parade if we pull this off? Kalen laughed, the tension easing slightly. If they do, you're giving the speech. Deal, Jax said, his smile infectious. And so they waited, 3 small cogs in the grand machine of the universe, ready to see where the myth, and their choices, would lead them next. Kalen sat in front of the console, a cluster of blinking lights mocking her with their incessant insistence that her life was about to become exponentially more complicated. The alien's response glowed on the screen, a testament to optimism or delusion, depending on how much coffee she'd consumed. She rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of interstellar expectations pressing down like a too-tight helmet. "So, let me get this straight," Jack said, lounging in his chair as though it were a throne of sarcasm. "They're convinced we can liberate them because some old alien bedtime story said so." "Pretty much," Kaylin replied, her voice flat. "Apparently, we're the chosen ones, which is great because I've always wanted to be chosen for something other than cleaning out the air filters." Ree snorted from her perch by the central control unit, a smirk playing on her lips. "I've always said you'd be famous one day, Kaylin. Didn't think it would be as a space messiah, though." "Fame and fortune, all wrapped up in an ancient prophecy," Kaylin muttered, scrolling through the alien missive. It was filled with flowery language about humanity's noble spirit and unbreakable courage, which, as far as Kaylin was concerned, was about 50% accurate on a good day. Jax leaned forward, his expression shifting from amused to slightly concerned. "Jokes aside, what if they really believe this? What if they're banking everything on us playing the hero? Then they're as screwed as we are," Ree said, crossing her arms. "But maybe we can use it to our advantage. If they need us to play the part, we set the terms." Kaylin nodded, though the idea of leading an alien liberation effort was as appealing as licking a live wire. "It's risky. We barely know what we're dealing with here. The only thing we know for sure is they're desperate enough to believe in fairy tales. And desperate people do desperate things," Jax added, his grin fading slightly. "Like hurling a planet-sized rock at us." "Right," Kaylin said, exhaling heavily. "So, let's tread carefully. We need more information about these oppressive overlords they're so keen on rebelling against." Ree tapped her console thoughtfully. "I'll draft a response. Ask them for details, what strength we're looking at, what kind of defenses we'll have to break through. If we're going to consider this, we need the full picture." "Good," Kaylin agreed. "And ask them about their fleet's capabilities. For all we know, they could be lugging around a few surprise packages of their own." Jax chuckled darkly. "Imagine that. We agree to help and then they pull out a bigger rock." The three of them exchanged glances, and despite the gravity of the situation, they couldn't help but laugh. It was either that or scream, and they were running low on scream time. As Ree composed the message, Kaylin leaned back, her mind racing with possibilities. The aliens' belief in the myth cast humanity as legendary liberators, but no one had asked if they wanted the job. Yet here they were, navigating the precarious tightrope between cosmic heroes and interstellar casualties. "Think we can pull it off?" Jax asked, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "Honestly," Kaylin replied, looking him in the eye, "I have no idea, but if we don't try, we may end up as a footnote in their myth, the humans who almost saved us." "Sounds like a bestseller," Jax quipped. "Tragedy, drama, and just a hint of impending doom." Ree sent the message, and they settled into an uneasy silence, waiting for the aliens' next move. Outside, the solar farm glimmered like a sea of shattered glass, the mirrors reflecting the dying light of a distant sun. Hours later, the response arrived, a rush of alien characters streaming across the console. Kaylin deciphered the words, piecing together the aliens' plea for assistance. Their oppressors were a technologically advanced race, holding them under strict control. The aliens spoke of brutality, of lives lived under constant surveillance and fear. Their fleet, hidden behind the remnants of the shattered rogue planet, was their last hope. "So, they really are in deep," Jax said, peering over her shoulder. "Yeah," Kaylin replied, feeling the weight of their desperation. "And they think we're the only ones who can help." Ree absorbed the information with the pragmatism of someone who's seen too much. "They're asking for a miracle, and all we have is this battered station and a solar farm that doubles as a death ray. Maybe we can scare the oppressors off with the promise of impromptu sunburns," Jax suggested, his grin returning. Kaylin chuckled, though the humor didn't quite reach her eyes. If only it were that simple. They spent the next few hours strategizing, trying to come up with a plan that wouldn't end with them orbiting the nearest sun as stardust. Ideas were thrown around and shot down, their options narrowing with each passing minute. "Here's a thought," Jack said, leaning back and stretching. "What if we play into their myth but set it up so they have to do most of the heavy lifting, like a cosmic bait-and switch?" Ree asked, intrigued. "Exactly," Jax replied. "We give them the blueprint for a revolution, but they have to provide the manpower and resources." Kaylin tapped her chin thoughtfully. "That might just work. We offer guidance, maybe some tactical support, but the actual rebellion has to be them. We can't fight their war. Less chance of us getting vaporized," Jax pointed out, "and more chance of them stepping up." Ree nodded, her expression one of cautious optimism. "It's risky, but it might be our best shot. We have to make them understand that while we can help, we're not their saviors." "Yeah," Kaylin agreed. "We're just the guides," Jax interjected with a grin. "The wise sages who show them the way." "Wise sages," Kaylin echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Hey," Jack said, feigning offense. "I've been known to have a moment of wisdom once or twice." "Sure," Ree snorted, "like that time you tried to fix the coolant leak with duct tape and prayer." "Worked, didn't it?" Jack shot back, unfazed. Kaylin shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips. "Okay, so we offer them guidance. We show them how to take control of their destiny without becoming collateral." Ree began drafting the new message, outlining their proposal with the kind of careful diplomacy she'd honed over years of dealing with stubborn machinery. "Let's hope they go for it. Or at least don't try to vaporize us when they realize we're not leading the charge," Kaylin added. The message was sent, and they settled into a tense waiting game, the silence punctuated by the hum of the station's life support systems. Each passing hour felt like an eternity, the weight of a galaxy's expectations pressing down on their shoulders. Finally, the aliens' response came through. Their reply was cautious, filled with questions and concerns, but there was a glimmer of hope, a willingness to trust in their human allies. "They are on board," Ree announced, her voice a mix of relief and resolve. "They're willing to follow our lead, but they're nervous." "Can't blame them," Jack said. "I'd be nervous too if my fate rested on a group of humans with questionable credentials." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Kaylin quipped. "Hey, I'm just saying," Jax replied, holding up his hands. "But seriously, they trust us enough to give it a shot." "That's something," Kaylin nodded, feeling the shift in their situation. They were no longer passive observers in the alien struggle. They were active participants, guiding the course of an interstellar rebellion. "What's our next move?" Jax asked, his tone serious once more. "We keep our end of the bargain," Kaylin said. "We help them plan, give them every advantage we can. But we have to be prepared for the fallout too." "Yeah," Ree agreed, her expression grim. "If this goes south, it'll be on us." The weight of responsibility settled over them, a tangible presence in the cramped confines of the hub. But there was also a sense of purpose, a determination to see this through to the end, whatever end that might be. "At least we're not alone in this," Kaylin said, glancing at her companions. "We've got each other, and that counts for something." Jax grinned, the tension easing slightly. "And if we pull it off, maybe we'll finally be able to afford some upgrades around here. Or at least a proper coffee machine," Ree added with a smirk. Kaylin chuckled, the sound echoing in the small space. Despite the odds stacked against them, there was a sense of camaraderie, a bond forged in the fires of shared adversity. As they prepared to dive into the next phase of their plan, Kaylin couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. They might not be the mythical heroes the aliens believed them to be, but they were determined to make a difference, to prove that even a ragtag group of engineers could change the course of history. And if they failed, well, at least they'd go down swinging, with a few good laughs along the way. The central hub hummed with the kind of energy that only came from plotting a potential mass destruction. Kaylin, Jax, and Ree were huddled around a holographic display showing the solar farm's reconfigured superlaser. Once a savior of humanity, now it was a weapon capable of turning a rogue planet into space debris. "Funny how things turned out." "Congratulations," Jax said, clapping Kaylin on the shoulder. "You're now the proud owner of the universe's largest and least efficient death ray. How does it feel?" "Like I'm one step away from a nervous breakdown," Kaylin replied, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Do you have any idea how much pressure it is to aim this thing?" "Well, aim for the big target," Ree suggested dryly. "Can't miss it." Kaylin rolled her eyes. It wasn't like steering a cosmic weapon was on her life's bucket list. "So, let's recap. We have a solar farm repurposed for mass destruction, a fleet of oppressed aliens banking on us, and oppressors who might not take kindly to their slaves getting uppity. No pressure. Just your average Tuesday," Jax added with a smirk, leaning back casually against the console. And here I was, hoping for a nice quiet day of fixing circuits and arguing about whose turn it is to wash the synth mugs. Ree was tapping away, trying to work out the logistics of their next move. "I've been going through the data the aliens sent. There's dissent brewing within their ranks. Some are all in, ready to follow the humans into glorious rebellion. Others think we're just as likely to get them all vaporized. Smart money might be on the latter," Kaylin remarked, glancing at the display. "If the oppressors react, things could get messy, and I don't mean somebody forgot to clean the air filter messy. We'll need to keep our eyes on that dissent," Ree continued, unperturbed. "If things fall apart before we get them organized, it'll be like giving a toddler a plasma grenade," Jax snorted. "Yeah, not great for anyone involved." Kaylin's mind raced with possibilities. The weight of the decision loomed over them all. They were playing a dangerous game and the stakes were astronomical, literally. "What if we try to use that dissent to our advantage?" she mused. "If we can convince the doubters we're not just talking out of our exhaust ports, maybe they'll help us keep things under control." "And how do you propose we do that?" Ree asked, eyebrow raised. "Offer them free snacks and a motivational speech. Worked for motivational cults in the old days," Jax joked. "But seriously, we might need to show them a bit of what we can do. Give them a taste of our technological prowess. Not vaporizing a planet just yet, but something big enough to impress." Kaylin nodded. "A demonstration. Something that says, hey, look, we can actually pull this off, trust us, but not so much it tips off the oppressors. Could make it seem like an accident," Jax suggested. "Big enough to impress, but not so big it rings alarm bells." "You mean like when you accidentally locked yourself in the airlock last month?" Ree asked. "Exactly," Jax replied, unfazed. "Memorable, but not catastrophic." With that, they set to work, devising a plan that would hopefully quell the dissent and galvanize the aliens without inviting too much attention from their overseers. In the meantime, Kaylin couldn't shake the feeling they were doing something monumentally stupid. It was like being handed the universe's worst puzzle, with half the pieces missing and the rest made of explosives. But desperate people do desperate things, and right now, they were about as desperate as it got. As they worked, the reality of their situation settled in. Kaylin found herself staring at the display again, the swirling data a constant reminder of what was at stake. The aliens saw them as mythical figures, saviors from beyond the stars, when really they were just improvising with the tools they had. "Okay," Ree said finally, breaking the tense silence. "I've recalibrated the solar farm's reflector arrays. We can use them to create a focused burst, simulate a minor cosmic event. Should be just dramatic enough to make a point without blowing anyone to space hell. Or us," Jax added. "That's a bonus." Kaylin took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "Let's hope our alien friends are watching." They sent a quick transmission to the alien fleet, alerting them to the incoming demonstration. Not long after, they aligned the arrays and fired. The station shuddered slightly as energy surged through the conduits, a controlled release of power arcing harmlessly into space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then in the darkness of space, a brilliant flare erupted, a manufactured nova that lit up the void. It was, for lack of a better term, a hell of a light show. "Well, that was pretty," Jax remarked, shielding his eyes from the glare. "Think it was enough to get their attention?" "Let's hope so," Kaylin replied, watching the sensors for any response from the alien fleet. The comms crackled to life, a flurry of excited alien chatter filtering through. They'd seen it, all right. and more importantly, they were impressed. "Looks like they bought it," Ree said, a hint of relief in her voice. "Great," Jax said. "Now let's just hope they don't expect fireworks every time we have a strategy meeting." With the demonstration a success, they turned their attention back to the looming threat of the rogue planet. The superlaser could potentially destroy it, but the moral implications gnawed at Kalen. Was it right to wield such power, even with the best intentions? "Do we really want to go down in history as the ones who pulled the trigger on a planet?" Kalen asked, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at her. "Better than going down as the idiots who let it hit us," Jax replied, ever the pragmatist. "Still," Kalen pressed, "is there any way around this? We don't want to become the very thing the aliens are fighting against." Ree leaned back, considering. "If we can stall it, maybe use the superlaser to nudge its trajectory, might buy us some time to find a better solution. Or just punt it into someone else's backyard," Jax added with a grim chuckle. Let them deal with it. They all knew it was a stopgap measure at best, but it was something. An imperfect solution in an imperfect situation. Desperate times, desperate measures. As they prepared for the next step, the gravity of their actions weighed heavily on Kalen. They were trying to guide the fate of an entire alien civilization, balancing their hopes against the harsh realities of survival. "All right," Kalen said, trying to muster some semblance of confidence. "Let's recalibrate for a gentle nudge. We can't solve everything in one go, but we can buy ourselves some time. And maybe come up with a plan that doesn't involve getting us all vaporized," Ree added. "Right," Jax agreed, pulling up the necessary schematics. "One small step for a planet, one giant leap for our peace of mind." Their plan set, they once again harnessed the power of the solar farm, diverting the superlaser to nudge the rogue planet off its path. It was a delicate operation, requiring precision and a healthy dose of luck. "Firing in 5, Ree announced, her voice steady amidst the chaos. 4, 3, 2, the station trembled slightly as the superlaser engaged, a lance of energy arcing through space to meet the rogue planet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the planet's trajectory began to shift. "It's working," Kalen said, barely daring to believe it. "So far, so good," Jax replied. "Now let's just hope it stays that way." The aliens' response was immediate and enthusiastic, their communications filled with gratitude and renewed hope. They saw the humans as miracle workers, capable of bending the cosmos to their will. "Miracle workers," Kalen echoed, shaking her head. "If only they knew." "They'd probably still follow us," Ree said thoughtfully. "Sometimes all it takes is the belief that something better is possible." "Yeah," Jax agreed. "And if we keep fooling them long enough, maybe we can start to believe it too." The mood in the hub was one of cautious optimism. They'd bought themselves time, given the aliens hope, and avoided immediate catastrophe. But the path ahead was still fraught with danger, and the burden of leadership hung over them like a shadow. "Let's not get comfortable," Kalen warned. "This is just the beginning. We've still got a long way to go." "Right," Jax said, sitting up. "Now let's figure out how to keep this circus rolling without dropping any more planets on our heads." With their temporary success, they turned back to the task of planning, sifting through the endless variables of interstellar rebellion. The weight of their decisions pressed down on them, but for the first time Kalen felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could pull this off. And if not, well, at least they'd go down swinging, with a few good laughs along the way. Kalen stared at the holographic display, the rogue planet now a looming, uninvited guest in their solar system. It was like watching a slow-motion disaster unfold, except without the luxury of popcorn and a cozy chair. The alien fleet buzzed around it like disturbed bees, chattering in a language that sounded like a blender full of marbles. "Well, this is definitely not what I had planned for today," Kalen muttered. "I was hoping for a nice, uneventful day of existential dread, followed by a light salad." "There's always tomorrow," Jax said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He was fiddling with the tablet, his fingers dancing over its surface like an overcaffeinated pianist. Assuming we don't all get squashed into interstellar jam. Ree was hunched over the central control unit, her expression one of grim determination. "The aliens are freaking out," she reported, her eyes scanning the data. "Half of them are ready to follow us into battle. The other half thinks rebelling is a one-way ticket to Vapor Town. Can't blame them," Jax said with a snort. "If I had a nickel for every time someone promised me liberation and delivered a swift ass-kicking instead, I'd probably have a lot of useless space currency." Kaelin sighed, the weight of leadership pressing down on her like a lead blanket. "We need to make a decision," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We can't just sit here with our thumbs up our cosmic exhaust ports." "All right," Ree said, looking up from the controls. "Let's break it down, pros and cons. If we use the superlaser, we might be able to blow that planet back to wherever it came from." "And the cons?" Kaelin asked. "We're still figuring that part out," Jax admitted. "But I'd wager on a few. Possible backlash from the aliens, potential implosion of our moral compass, the whole playing God thing. So nothing major," Kaelin said dryly. "Pretty much," Jax replied, flashing a sardonic grin. "Same old Tuesday." The comms crackled with a new burst of alien chatter, this time more frantic. Their alien allies, or whatever they were teetering on the edge of mutiny. The promise of human saviors was wearing thin, and the reality of their situation was starting to sink in. "We need to get them on board," Kaelin said. "We need them to believe that we can actually do this." "How do we do that?" Ree asked, skepticism coloring her tone. "We've already given them a light show. What's next, a magic trick?" Kaelin considered her options, her mind racing. "We do what every great leader does when faced with insurmountable odds. We run like hell," Jax suggested. "We bluff," Kaelin corrected. "We convince them we have a plan even if we're making it up as we go along. We use their belief in us as leverage." "Great," Jax said. "We're a cosmic con job. What's next, selling them snake oil and a bridge on Mars?" "Something like that," Kaelin replied. "But first we need to deal with the rogue planet. If we don't, there won't be anyone left to fool." "All right," Ree said, her voice resolute. "Let's get the laser ready. We'll make it seem like we're in control, but we've got to keep the aliens from tearing each other apart in the meantime." Kaelin nodded, feeling the tension in the room ratchet up a notch. It was like being at the eye of a storm, the world swirling in chaos around them. But inside, everything was strangely calm. "Prepare the superlaser," Kaelin ordered, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Jax, start talking to the aliens. Lie like your life depends on it because it probably does." Jax saluted with mock seriousness. "Time to unleash the old charm," he said, pulling up the comms interface. As Jax began broadcasting, Kaelin focused on the task at hand. The superlaser was a beast of a machine, all humming power and barely contained fury. It was humanity's last hope, and quite possibly their last mistake. "Everything ready?" she asked, fingers hovering over the control panel like a gambler about to roll the dice. "Ready as we'll ever be," Ree replied. "This either works or it doesn't. Either way, it'll be spectacular." With a final, deep breath, Kaelin engaged the superlaser. The station vibrated, a low hum building to a roar as energy surged through the conduits. The holographic display showed the beam lancing out, a spear of blinding light cutting through the void. The rogue planet loomed large, indifferent, a monolith of rock and ice on a collision course with destiny. As the laser struck, a shockwave rippled across its surface, debris and dust scattering into space. For a moment, silence reigned. Kaelin held her breath, waiting for the universe to decide their fate. Then slowly the planet's trajectory began to shift. "It's working," Ree said, a note of awe in her voice. "Thank the cosmos," Jax muttered, eyes glued to the display. "For a second there, I thought we'd be writing our own obituary." The aliens were in an uproar, their communications a chaotic mix of relief and exhilaration. They were seeing the impossible, their new human allies doing what they had thought was beyond reach. "Looks like we've got their attention," Kaelin said, relief washing over her. But this is just a temporary fix. We need to keep the momentum going. We'll have to play it by ear, Ree said, ever the pragmatist. Keep them believing in us until we figure out the next move. Jax chuckled darkly. And here I thought surviving a cosmic apocalypse was going to be the hard part. Turns out it's the easy bit. Don't worry, Kalen said. I'm sure we'll find 100 more ways to screw up before this is over. Looking forward to it, Jax replied, his grin a flash of gallows humor. As they regrouped, Kalen felt the burden of leadership settle back onto her shoulders. The rogue planet was out of immediate danger, but the real challenge was just beginning. The aliens were looking to them for guidance, and the reality of their situation was a fragile house of cards. All right, Kalen said, summoning her resolve. Let's keep this charade going. We've got a rebellion to run and a galaxy to save. And who knows, Ree added, maybe we'll actually pull it off without getting vaporized. Or maybe we'll turn into legends, Jax said with a wink. The humans who bluffed a galaxy and somehow survived. With a renewed sense of purpose, they turned back to their screens, ready to face whatever came next. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and Kalen was determined to see it through to the bitter end. In that moment, with the hum of the superlaser fading and the alien fleet buzzing with renewed hope, Kalen realized something. Maybe, just maybe, they had a shot at pulling off the impossible. And if not, at least they'd go down swinging, leaving one hell of a mess for someone else to clean up. Kalen leaned back from the console, rubbing her temples and trying to ignore the nagging feeling that every decision she made was like stepping into a minefield. The rogue planet might have been nudged off its destructive course, but their problems were far from over. Around her, the central hub hummed with activity, a makeshift war room where the fate of their solar system was being decided by a ragtag crew of misfits and malcontents. Jax was fiddling with the tablet again, the glow of the screen lighting his face with an unhealthy pallor. "So, any bright ideas on how we keep this little farce going?" he asked, not even bothering to look up. "Working on it," Kalen replied, her voice a mix of exhaustion and determination. "I've been thinking." "Oh," Jax interrupted, grinning. "That's never good." "Very funny," Kalen shot back. "I've been thinking we might have a way to boost the superlaser even more." Ree's eyes flicked over from the central control unit, where she'd been sifting through alien transmissions. "How?" Kalen hesitated, knowing she was about to propose something that could either save them or turn their already precarious situation into a full-blown catastrophe. "The solar farm," she said. "There's a hidden power source in the arrays." Jax raised an eyebrow. "You mean the backup to the death ray? The one we were told never to touch under any circumstances?" "That's the one," Kalen confirmed. "It's risky, I know. We're talking about rerouting a massive amount of energy, enough to fry us all if we're not careful." Ree looked thoughtful, her analytical mind already working through the logistics. "And you're sure it'll amplify the superlaser?" "Pretty sure," Kalen said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "But it's not just about the tech. We need everyone on board with this, human and alien alike." "Great," Jax muttered. "All we have to do is unite two species in the face of imminent destruction. Piece of cake." "It's not impossible," Kalen insisted. "We've already given them a taste of hope. Now we need to turn that into a full-course meal." Jax snorted. "Hope, the most dangerous thing in the universe, right up there with superlasers and my Aunt Marge's potato salad." "Think of it as our secret weapon," Kalen said. "If we can get both sides to work together, we just might pull this off. And if not, we'll go out with a bang," Ree noted dryly. "Cosmic fireworks for everyone." Kalen turned her attention to the holographic display, where the alien fleet was regrouping, their movements a chaotic dance of uncertainty. She took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, the ones that would cut through the noise and the fear. "All right," she said, her voice steady. "Let's talk to them. Tell them we have a plan, something that only works if we all cooperate. Make them see that this isn't just about survival, it's about taking control of our destiny." "You want me to charm them into submission?" Jax asked, already fiddling with the comms. "Something like that," Kalen replied. "Just be yourself. Well, maybe not entirely. Tone down the sarcasm a bit. Where's the fun in that? Jax grinned before patching into the alien frequency. As he started speaking, Kalen watched him work, marveling at how he could take their precarious situation and spin it into something resembling confidence. He was a master at turning desperation into opportunity, a skill that had kept them alive more times than she cared to count. "Listen up, folks," Jax said, his voice smooth, almost casual. "We've got a plan to put that rogue planet on ice for good. But here's the thing, it's a team effort. We need all hands on deck for this one, human and alien alike." Ree was monitoring the responses, her fingers flying over the controls. "They're listening," she reported. "Some of them are even buying it." "Good," Kalen said. "Now we just need to convince them that not cooperating means certain doom." "Ah, the classic carrot and stick approach," Jax said. "Except in this case the stick is a planet-sized battering ram." Kalen nodded, her mind racing with possibilities and pitfalls. "Exactly. We show them the stakes and then we show them the way out." Ree interjected, her voice urgent. "We've got some resistance on the alien side. There are factions who still think this is a trap." "Of course there are," Jax sighed. "Because nothing can ever be simple." Kalen leaned forward, determination hardening her voice. "Then we show them the truth. We open the books, let them see the power we're dealing with. Transparency is key. They need to know we're all in this together, that we're not just using them as cannon fodder." "And if that doesn't work?" Ree asked. Kalen shrugged, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Then we improvise." "We've gotten pretty good at that." The comms crackled with more alien chatter, the debate heating up as their message spread through the fleet. Kalen could feel the tension in the room, a coiled spring ready to explode. Jax turned back to her, his expression unusually serious. "You really think this will work?" Kalen met his gaze, the weight of leadership pressing down on her shoulders but not quite crushing her spirit. "I don't know," she admitted, "but it's the best shot we've got, and if we're going to go down, we might as well go down swinging." "That's the spirit," Jax said with a wry grin. "Nothing like a little optimism to spice up our impending doom." Kalen smirked. "Let's just hope it's contagious." With the plan set in motion, they set to work, the hub buzzing with activity as they prepared for the next phase. Ree was coordinating with the aliens, her voice firm and reassuring as she laid out their strategy. Jax was at his console, fingers flying over the keys as he rerouted power and adjusted coordinates. Kalen watched them work, feeling a surge of pride in her team. They were a motley crew, a collection of misfits and survivors, but they were her misfits. And together, they were going to take on the universe. The holographic display flickered, showing the rogue planet now flanked by the alien fleet. It was a sight to behold, a testament to what they could achieve when they put aside their differences and worked together. "All right, people," Kalen called, her voice carrying through the hub. "Let's show this universe what we're made of. Engage the backup power and prepare to fire on my mark." There was a moment of silence, the calm before the storm, as everyone held their breath. Kalen could feel the anticipation crackling in the air, a living thing that pulsed with energy. "On my mark," she repeated, fingers hovering over the control panel. The solar farm outside was a sea of mirrors, reflecting the harsh light of distant stars. It had been built to sustain life, to nurture and protect. Now it was their greatest weapon, a tool of destruction in the name of survival. "Mark," Kalen ordered, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The station vibrated, a deep rumble that shook the walls and rattled the fixtures. The backup power surged through the conduits, a river of energy that threatened to overwhelm everything in its path. The holographic display lit up with a blaze of color as the superlaser fired, a beam of light so intense it seemed to pierce the very fabric of space. The rogue planet shuddered under the impact, its surface rippling as the beam tore into it. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing had changed. The planet loomed large, a silent sentinel in the void. But then slowly it began to shift, its trajectory bending under the relentless assault. "We did it," Ree breathed, her voice a mix of disbelief and triumph. "Yeah," Jax said, a wide grin splitting his face. We actually did it. Take that, cosmic bowling ball. The alien comms erupted with a cacophony of cheers and exclamations, their disbelief giving way to celebration. They had seen the impossible, their human allies achieving what had seemed like a distant dream. Kaylin let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, the tension in her body slowly unwinding. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. But even as relief washed over her, she knew this was just the beginning. They'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. The rogue planet was out of immediate danger, but the threat of annihilation still loomed large. "All right, team," she called, her voice cutting through the noise. "Let's not get too comfortable. We've still got a galaxy to save. And a rebellion to run," Jax added, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Can't forget that," Kaylin said with a chuckle. "We've made our mark. Now let's make it stick." As they regrouped, Kaylin felt a renewed sense of purpose settle over her. They'd shown the universe what humans were capable of, and now it was time to finish what they'd started. In that moment, with the alien fleet buzzing with newfound hope and the universe watching their every move, Kaylin knew one thing for certain: they would not go quietly into the night. They would fight tooth and nail for their right to exist, and if they failed, well, at least they'd leave one hell of a mess behind. Kaylin leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. Sleep was an old friend she hadn't seen in years, and she missed it like hell. But the rogue planet was no longer an immediate threat, and for that, she supposed, she could sacrifice a bit more sleep. Across the hub, Jax was tapping away at his tablet like a man possessed, the unhealthy glow giving him a ghoulish look. He barely glanced up as Kaylin approached. "So, Captain Courageous," Jax drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's the next grand step in our journey to save the universe? Building a daycare for alien babies?" Kaylin smirked. "I was thinking more along the lines of not dying." "Baby steps, Jax," Jax nodded sagely. "Important life goal that, not dying. Pity it's so damn hard to achieve." Ree, never one for idle chatter, was hunched over the central control unit, her fingers dancing across the console with the grace of a concert pianist. She looked up, eyes sharp and focused. "The energy reroute worked better than expected," she said, surprising everyone with a rare glimpse of satisfaction on her usually stoic face. "The superlaser didn't just knock the planet off course, it pretty much obliterated it." "Finally, some good news," Kaylin said. "Alien myths about human saviors coming true, and we didn't even have to wear ridiculous capes." "Speak for yourself," Jax snarked. "I think I'd look great in a cape. More like a clown suit," Ree muttered under her breath, earning a snicker from Kaylin. The alien comms were still ablaze with chatter, a symphony of disbelief and awe. The myths that had once seemed like fairy tales were now reality. Somehow, humanity, the galaxy's favorite underdogs, had pulled off the impossible. It was like a bad space opera plot, only with more sarcasm and fewer catchy musical numbers. Kaylin turned her attention back to the holographic display. The rogue planet, or what was left of it, was now a field of asteroids and debris. The alien fleet hovered nearby, a swarm of ships blinking in the vastness. A fleet that, thanks to their miracle-working stunt, was now looking at humanity with something akin to respect. "Time to solidify this alliance," Kaylin said, steeling herself for what was next. "We need to convince them that working with us isn't just a one-time gig." Jax raised an eyebrow. "You mean we need to charm them into thinking our incompetence is endearing?" "Exactly," Kaylin replied. "It's our special talent." Ree was already flipping through data on her screen, analyzing alien reactions and assessing their newfound alliance. "They are listening," she confirmed. "But they are skeptical. A few explosions and a rogue planet death scene aren't enough to make them forget centuries of myths and legends." Kaylin nodded. "Which is why we need to keep the narrative going. We've given them a taste of what's possible. Now we need to make them see a future where humans and aliens work together, where we're not just using them as cannon fodder." "Nice speech," Jax said. "Though I reckon adding a bit of doom and gloom would really spice it up." "They are already getting plenty of doom and gloom," Kaylin replied dryly. What they need is a reason to believe that this isn't just a blip in the universe's otherwise miserable existence. Jax shrugged. Can't blame a guy for trying to add some flair. The truth was, as much as they joked, the stakes were painfully high. The universe was a cruel place, filled with more threats than opportunities. Yet here they were, a ragtag crew of misfits, holding the fate of two species in their hands. Kalen took a deep breath and turned to the comms. It was time to remind the aliens why they'd chosen to work with the humans in the first place. Time to turn their desperation into a rallying cry. "Attention, all ships," Kalen said, her voice steady as she addressed the alien fleet. "We've proven we can achieve the impossible together, but it's not enough to just survive. We need to build a future where humans and aliens stand side by side." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I know it sounds like a fairy tale, but fairy tales are just myths waiting to come true. We've taken the first step by eliminating the rogue planet. Now, we need to continue walking this path together." Jax grinned, whispering under his breath, "Kalen the motivator." Who knew Ree's attention was fixed on the responses coming in. "They're responding positively," she said. "Most of them anyway. There's always a few who think joining forces will end with us conquering the galaxy." "Well, we all need hobbies," Jax quipped. "World domination just happens to be ours." Ree shot him a withering look, but Kalen couldn't help but laugh. Gallows humor was their lifeline in situations like this. The comms continued to buzz, both with alien chatter and the occasional human transmission. The tension in the air was palpable, a living thing that pulsed with every word exchanged, every decision made. Kalen watched the holographic display, the alien ships moving into formation. It was a strange sight, a fleet that had once been adversarial now standing as allies. It hadn't been easy, and it wouldn't be easy going forward, but they'd made it this far, hadn't they? "Time to seal the deal," Kalen said, her voice firm with resolve. "And how do we do that?" Jax asked. "Bake them a cake, offer them free Wi-Fi. We show them we're in this for the long haul, that we can be trusted," Kalen replied. "We've got a galaxy to save, and we need their help to do it." Ree nodded. "And if they still think we're plotting something, then we prove them wrong," Kalen said simply. "We've already shown them what we can do. Now we need to show them who we are." Jax leaned back, eyeing Kalen with something that might have been admiration. "You know, for a leader who's making it up as she goes, you're not half bad," Kalen chuckled. "High praise coming from you." The conversation was interrupted by a new transmission, the alien fleet broadcasting a message of unity and cooperation. It was a formal declaration, a promise to stand with humanity against the myriad threats they faced, a step towards a future that once seemed impossible. "Well, I'll be damned," Jax said, staring at the screen. "They actually bought it." "Looks like it," Ree agreed, her voice laced with cautious optimism. Kalen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They'd done it. They'd managed to turn myth into reality, to forge an alliance that could change the course of history. But she knew better than to rest on laurels. The universe had a way of kicking you in the teeth when you least expected it. "All right, team," she said, rallying her crew. "We've got a long road ahead. Let's make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." Jax nodded, a smirk playing on his lips. "Bring it on. If we can survive your leadership, we can survive anything." Kalen rolled her eyes, but there was affection in her gaze. Her crew might have been a motley collection of misfits, but they were hers. Together, they'd faced down overwhelming odds, and they'd come out the other side stronger for it. As they turned back to their tasks, the hub buzzed with renewed energy. The universe was watching, but for once, Kalen didn't mind. They'd made their mark. Now it was time to make it last. The holographic display continued to show the alien fleet, now moving as one. They'd managed to bring together two species with little more than desperation and sheer stubbornness. It was a start. With a deep breath, Kalen settled into her chair, ready to face whatever came next. They'd proven they could stand against the odds. Now they needed to prove they could build something lasting. "Here's to the future," Kalen said, raising an imaginary glass. "May it be slightly less terrible than the past." Jax clinked his tablet against hers in a mock toast. "I'll drink to that, just as soon as we find some actual booze." Ree shook her head, a rare smile on her lips. "Here's hoping." With the rogue planet no longer a threat and an alliance forged in the fires of desperation, there was a glimmer of hope on the horizon. It was a fragile thing, but it was there, a spark that could ignite a brighter future. And Kalen was prepared to fight like hell to keep it burning. The hub hummed with activity, each member of the crew playing their part in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was theirs. As the realities of their situation settled around them, Kalen knew they'd face more challenges. The universe was vast and filled with dangers lurking in every corner, but they'd face those dangers together, united in purpose and determination. "Let's get to work," Kalen said, determination etched into every line of her face. Jax grinned. "Ah, the sweet sound of impending doom. Music to my ears," Ree chuckled softly. "Wouldn't have it any other way." And with that they dove back into the fray, ready to take on whatever the universe had in store. Together, they'd navigate the murky waters of interstellar politics, facing down threats both known and unknown. In the end, it was what they did best: survive, adapt, and snark their way through the darkest of times. And if they had to blow up a few planets along the way, well, so be it. Whatever their destiny held, Kalen knew one thing for sure: they'd face it head-on, humor intact, and with a damn good punchline ready for when the universe inevitably tried to knock them down again. Kalen slouched in her chair, exhausted but with a peculiar sense of satisfaction pulsating through her. She had just done the impossible, turned a galaxy of skeptics into believers. Or at least, somewhat less suspicious skeptics. The Superlacer had thoroughly convinced the alien fleet that humanity might be worth more than a footnote in some cosmic history book. "Well, looks like we're the new kids on the block," Kalen mused aloud, staring at the holographic display where remnants of the rogue planet drifted like cosmic confetti. "Here's hoping we don't screw it up." Jax glanced up from his tablet, eyes gleaming with mischief. "What, you mean this isn't the part where we retire to a luxury moon resort with all-inclusive cocktails and zero responsibilities?" "Yeah, sure," Kalen snorted. "Right after we convince the galaxy we're not just a bunch of trigger-happy maniacs with a penchant for planetary destruction." Ree, ever focused, barely looked up from her console. "I'd settle for a nap and a decent meal." Jax shot her a sympathetic look. "Aim high, Ree, aim high." Kalen shook her head, fighting a smile. Her team's dry wit was as comforting as it was irritating, a constant reminder that they were all human, prone to fits of gallows humor even in the darkest of times. Maybe especially in the darkest of times. "Seriously, though," Jax continued, his tone shifting from playful to genuinely curious. "What's next? We've got the aliens onside, sure, but what's the plan?" "We gonna start a book club with them or something? Interstellar Opera's Book of the Month," Ree suggested, finally tearing her gaze from the screen. Kalen chuckled. "Something like that. More like convincing them we're not going to fly off the handle and start a war every other Tuesday." Ree raised an eyebrow. "Might take more than a few motivational speeches." "Well, if all else fails, I hear they're suckers for Shakespeare," Jax quipped. "Or space karaoke," Kalen added. "We could always fall back on that." "Please, no," Ree groaned. "Save us all the embarrassment." Despite the banter, the truth was stark and unavoidable. They were in uncharted territory. Humanity, the universe's oft-overlooked problem child, was now in a position of influence. The myths and legends that had surrounded them for centuries now had a kernel of truth, thanks to a desperate gamble and a death ray. Kalen's mind drifted to the idea of myths and their power. In a universe as vast and indifferent as theirs, everyone needed something to believe in, a narrative to cling to. She wondered if the aliens had stories about humans being clumsy saviors, stumbling their way to victory through sheer dumb luck and tenacity. If they didn't, maybe they should. "Maybe we lean into it," she said, almost to herself. "Into what?" Jax asked, raising a curious eyebrow. The myths, Kalen replied, more animated now. If they see us as these unlikely heroes, maybe we play the part. Give them a reason to trust us. Turn the tales into something real, Jack snorted. You mean act like we've got our act together? Precisely, Kalen said, grinning. Fake it till we make it. Ree looked thoughtful, tapping her fingers against the console. Could work. If we can get them to see us as partners instead of threats, that could go a long way. And if not, we always have karaoke, Jack said, unable to resist another jab. Kalen felt a flicker of hope. It was a fragile thing, like a candle in a hurricane, but it was there. The universe was chaotic, unpredictable, a place where the only constant was change. And yet maybe, just maybe, they could shape that change into something worthwhile. Turning her attention back to the holographic display, Kalen watched as their ships drifted alongside the alien fleet, a strange yet promising alliance. They had a long way to go, but they'd taken the first step, a shaky, uncertain step, but a step nonetheless. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the journey ahead. All right, team. Let's figure out what our new best friends need from us. I'm guessing it's more than just planet-busting superlasers, Jack said, stretching his arms over his head. Ree nodded. We should assess their tech, see where we can collaborate. Makes sense, Kalen agreed. We'll offer what we can, see what they're willing to share in return. Jax rubbed his hands together. Great. Time for some good old-fashioned interstellar diplomacy, or whatever passes for it these days, Kalen laughed. Diplomacy might be a strong word for what we do. Call it what you want, Jack shrugged. As long as it keeps us from getting blown to bits. Ree stood, stretching out the kinks in her back. I'll start with their ship data, see what we can integrate with our systems. Good idea, Kalen said, watching as Ree headed to the back of the hub, eager to get started. Ree was the glue that held them together, the steady hand in a storm of chaos. Without her, they'd probably have blown themselves up by now, intentionally or otherwise. Jax leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. And what about you, fearless leader? What's your next grand move? Not sure, Kalen admitted, glancing around the hub at the organized chaos. But something tells me that convincing them we're trustworthy will be the easy part. It's what comes after that'll keep us up at night. Jax nodded, a sardonic smirk on his lips. Nothing like impending doom to make a girl lose sleep. Or an overactive conscience, Kalen replied. I'm not picky. Their light-hearted exchange was interrupted by a new transmission from the alien fleet, the electronic voice crackling with formal tones. It was a request, no, an invitation to visit one of their capital ships. A show of goodwill, they said. A chance to build bridges, they said. Well, isn't this cozy, Jax remarked, peering at the screen. They want to invite us over for tea and interspecies bonding. Kalen couldn't help but grin at the absurdity of it all. Looks like we've got our work cut out for us. And here I was thinking we'd get a break, Jax sighed dramatically. Kalen stood, bracing herself for the task ahead. Time to put on our best diplomacy faces and show them what humans are made of. Snark and caffeine, Jax offered. Exactly, Kalen said, determined, with a side of existential dread. As they prepared to board the alien ship, Kalen allowed herself a moment of reflection. The myths about humans and their potential had always seemed like just that, fairy tales and wishful thinking. Yet here they were, proving that even the wildest stories could hold a grain of truth. Ready for this? Jax asked, quirking an eyebrow. Nope, Kalen replied honestly. But when has that ever stopped us? Together, they made their way to the docking bay, their steps echoing in the metallic corridors. The weight of their mission hung in the air, a reminder of how far they'd come and how much further they had to go. As they approached the airlock, rejoined them, a look of determination etched on her face. Let's make sure they know we're here to stay. Here's to alliances and myths, Jax said, raising an imaginary toast. May they both last longer than our patience. Kalen smiled, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline and camaraderie. They were a ragtag bunch, thrown together by circumstance and bonded by necessity. But against all odds, they'd carved out a place for themselves in the universe. The airlock opened with a hiss, revealing the alien ship's interior. As they stepped inside, Kalen felt a sense of awe and anticipation. This was the beginning of something new, something that could redefine their place in the cosmos. "All right, team," she said, her voice steady. "Let's show them what we're made of." And with that, they ventured forth into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. They were armed with nothing but their wits, humor, and an unyielding determination to survive. The alien ship was a marvel of technology, all sleek lines and humming power. It was a world away from the patched-together chaos of their own vessel, but its occupants welcomed their guests with genuine curiosity and respect. Kalen's heart pounded as she and her team were escorted to a grand chamber lined with pulsating lights. A delegation of aliens awaited them, their eyes watching with interest and, dare she hope, respect. "Welcome, humans," the lead alien said, their voice resonating through the chamber. "We are honored to have you among us." Kalen inclined her head, a gesture of acknowledgement. "The honor is ours. We're eager to learn more about your people and how we might work together." A murmur of agreement rippled through the alien ranks. It was a start. Jax leaned in, whispering, "Think they'll teach us that trick with the glowing eyes?" "Only if we ask nicely," Kalen replied, biting back a grin. Their exchange was brief, but it was enough to break the ice. The aliens, perceptive as ever, seemed to appreciate their humor, responding with what could only be described as a smile. As the meeting progressed, Kalen found herself navigating a delicate dance of negotiation and goodwill. It was a far cry from the usual shoot first, ask questions later approach she was used to, but it was refreshing in its own way. The negotiations were long and arduous, filled with moments of tension and understanding. At times, it felt like they were speaking completely different languages, a literal truth in some cases. But they pressed on, fueled by the knowledge that this was their chance to change the narrative, to redefine what it meant to be human in a universe that had always underestimated them. As always, proved invaluable, her technical expertise and calm demeanor lending credibility to their cause. Even Jax, with his quick wit and sharper tongue, found ways to connect with the aliens, bridging gaps with humor and a surprising depth of insight. As the discussions drew to a close, Kalen felt a sense of accomplishment. They had laid the groundwork for something more than just an alliance of convenience. They had set the stage for a future where humans and aliens could coexist, share knowledge, and face the challenges of the cosmos together. "Well, that wasn't so bad," Jax said as they left the chamber, his tone a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Speak for yourself," Ree replied, rubbing her temples. "I'm ready for a week-long nap." Kalen chuckled, feeling the same exhaustion mingled with satisfaction. "You earned it." As they returned to their ship, Kalen allowed herself to hope. They had survived the impossible, turned myth into reality, and forged a path that might just lead to a better future. For now, that was enough. They were still the galaxy's underdogs, but they were no longer alone. And that, Kalen decided, was a victory worth celebrating. As the airlock sealed behind them and they prepared for the journey home, Kalen turned to her team with a smile. "Let's get back to work." Jax groaned theatrically, but there was an unmistakable twinkle in his eye. "You really know how to spoil a moment, boss," Ree chuckled softly. "Wouldn't have it any other way." Together, they set course for the future, ready to face whatever the universe threw their way. They might not have all the answers, but they had each other, and in a universe as vast and unforgiving as theirs, that was a start. As the stars streaked past the viewport, Kalen felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were more than myths, more than legends. They were human, flawed, and resilient, and they were here to stay. Here's to the future, she thought, raising an imaginary glass once more. May it be slightly less terrible than the past, and filled with just enough snark to keep us sane.